Who are you with, Sarah? Oh, excellent. Nice to see you. You don't look that old. You are very young.
Yes, I'm
18? Freshman? Oh, very good.
Not be
The
so
Bombers.
sweet to me.
That was a Saxon. Don't hold that against me. That was an Alfred University Saxon.
I applied to Alfred too.
Oh, yeah? Oh, good. Well, thanks for coming. All right. You already got it rolling? You had it rolling last night and it just never stopped. All right, perfect. Okay. Well, it's almost 5:30, so maybe we can start by doing the pledge. Got everybody in here or coming in? Come on in. Want to lead us in the pledge?
We all stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, thank you everybody again for coming out. Thank you to our hosts here at the town of Elmira for opening up the facilities and having us. Many of you I see are familiar faces. There's some new faces. And we welcome you to these town halls that we do. We try to do these on a regular basis. Last night we did one over in Branchport, Jerusalem. Tonight we're in Elmira. I think we got a bunch more scheduled. I don't know. Joe tells me when they're on, and we show up and we just get to them. But so we appreciate you coming up. Now, a lot of times we do written questions. I don't know if we did that this evening, Joe. You out there, Joe? Anyone? Anyone? I don't know if Sharon made it.
She missed the turn. She's going around the block.
Okay. So a lot of times we do the written questions, but
We'll
you know,
get those
obviously
in a second.
we'll get to that. But we'll kind of do it off the cuff here tonight. But so our intention is to have a conversation. A lot of times we'll find that if we don't do kind of that written question type of thing, we tend to cover one or two topics. And I will tell you, the first time we did these, and we do more, I think, than any member in the Northeast in particular or across the country, we had a couple people come up and they're like, I just drove 40 miles, 50 minutes to come see you and never talked about the issues I wanted to talk about. So the written questions allow us to get back to you. So as Sharon comes in, if we aren't covering a topic that you want to have discussed, please use the papers, reach out to Joe and the guys in our office to try to cover those
We've got
topics.
6 chairs here for folks that are outside.
Yeah, we got some chairs up front if you guys want to join us. Come on in. Come on. So before we get started, maybe a little quick update from Washington, D.C. as we return home. Got home Thursday night. We got done with legislative business and then got back into town over the weekend. And first of all, I wish everyone a happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Hopefully you enjoy it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Kids are excited. I have a 15 and 13 at home, so they're counting down the days, and they're getting real close. You guys got to be excited too. Are you doing? Are you filming too? Is that for school? Or what is that? Is that for what, just for fun?
I might put it in the school thing that they're doing.
Awesome. Where do you go to school?
Handy.
Handy, right here. Excellent. Bravo. Thank you for coming out. Great for Handy. So anyway, maybe a quick update from Washington. Probably a lot of people have been reading about the budget agreement that was reached. We supported that agreement. I believe it was a step in the right direction. It's a very small step. By no means is it a large deal that's going to solve the national debt crisis of $17 trillion of a national debt that has to be taken care of, else these guys get stuck with a tremendous tab. And I don't want to do that to any of this next generation. And so we supported it. A couple of reasons why it's a step in the right direction is it, one, gets us away from government by crisis. Sharon, thank you. You found the place. Come on in. Come on in.
I'm okay. I just didn't want to interrupt, really.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you, Sharon. All right. Gets us away from that government by crisis for budget shutdown. You all recall the shutdown probably. And this allows us for the next 2 years to really kind of have a roadmap of something to work off so we can avoid those government shutdowns. It does reduce spending too. It reduces spending in the sense of it takes away the sequestration reductions that we're going to be putting in place. Hey, good to see you. But it does have savings over the period of time that keeps us on that track. And it also puts onto the table mandatory spending reductions. And that is a step in the right direction because a lot of the government shutdown discussion, and we use this chart all the time. This is a breakdown. Many of you have been to our town halls, know what this is. It's the breakdown of our $3.5 trillion of federal money we spend on an annual basis. And when you talk about government shutdown, you're primarily talking about this small piece of the pie. When you talk about discretionary spending, about $615 billion. And what has been a fight in Washington since I've been there is if we're ever going to get this debt crisis under control, we're going to have to open up these other pieces of the pie to a conversation of reform. And mandatory spending is a large piece of that rest of the pie.
Thank you.
And by opening up the door to mandatory spending as part of the budget agreement, we are now going into areas that have to be addressed in order to get a plan to get us out of this debt crisis. So for those two reasons in particular, that's why we supported it. And I think it's a step in the right direction. Other things to give you an update on, let's see, Farm Bill. There's a lot of guys who, women that are interested in that. We are very close. Very close. The House put out a bill, the Senate put out a bill, they're in conference committee as we speak, to getting a 5-year bill, in my opinion. Talking to the chairman of the House Agricultural Committee, Frank Lucas, we are really getting down to the final details. And we did take an action in the House before we left, just to be safe, to have a 30-day extension of farm policy that would go into effect if we can't get it done immediately when we get back to DC the first week of January. My hope is we don't have to use that 30-day extension because the differences in the House and Senate version are being really narrowed down to some issues with commodities, with rice and sugar and some other things that don't impact us, but that's my understanding getting the feedback from the chairman. And so that leads to a lot of good things in regards to giving us 5 years of farm policy. It does do some reforms on the food stamp provisions because one of the things that I was interested in and supportive of, and you hear some press about $39 billion of reductions in the food stamp program. Just so we're all on the same page, those $39 billion of reductions, people try to paint it as if I support pulling food out of hungry kids' mouths and stuff like that. That's not what we're talking about. You know, $20 billion of that $39 billion of reductions goes to what we call ABODs, able-bodied individuals without dependents. That's adults without kids. As part of the food stamp program, having a requirement that those individuals that are eligible for food stamps either have to get a job, either have to go to school to get a certificate or an education or a degree, or even volunteering in our community. To me, the reason why that was interesting to me, and I was very supportive of it, is we have to teach Americans how to fish through these programs, not just give them a fish for the day. I think that is a different philosophy that Washington, D.C. Needs to adhere to, and that's one of the things we're going to stand for. That probably won't go into the 5-year bill. That has been indications to me that the reforms on that food stamp program won't include those. The Senate has essentially rejected them. And so the remaining portion of the reductions that I think there's agreement on is getting away from what they have done historically in Washington is it what they call categorical qualification for social welfare programs. And what they did is for low-income housing individuals, if you receive $10 worth of aid under that low-income housing program, you automatically qualified for food stamps and other programs. What that did is it brought people into the food stamp program that weren't eligible for the program on the standalone merits. And so where they have gone and with about 90% of the remaining $19 billion of food stamp reduction out of that $39 billion is to take that qualification of $10 to $20. And that will kind of ferret out some people that aren't eligible for the food stamp program by way of clarifying that categorical qualification. Because that makes sense to me too, because what we want to do is make sure that the program goes to the people it is designed to benefit, and not have these kind of people that are not eligible for the program getting the program and getting those precious dollars as we deal with an $18 trillion national debt issue. People that aren't eligible for the program receiving those dollars. So that is another camera. We got another camera here, but that's the press. I know her. There you go. Good. So that's kind of an update from Washington. On a local update, as I was coming over here, and the press just reminded me of it, the governor just made an announcement. We were working with our state senator and our state assemblyman. The Elmira Psych Center will remain open.
Yay!
What's that?
Is it going to be residential or is it going to be day treatment?
It's going to be residential. My understanding, now the details are coming out, there will be a reduction in the number of beds for adults and children, but there will be adult beds and there will be children beds and there will be inpatient treatment. So we work
48 beds.
48 beds?
Does
Go ahead.
that mean a reduction of staff commensurate with that?
I don't know. It just literally, as we were coming in here, and maybe we could ask the press. They were over there with the governor, governor's office. But I don't believe. We'll have to wait and see for the final details. But obviously, the closure is something we were very concerned about. We were over at the Clemens Center, joining with everyone coming together, and that was an outstanding community effort of coming together, working in a collaborative way to make sure that our voice was heard. And that was. I'm glad the governor heard that. So good. So with that, we have some written questions.
We have a couple that have come in, and as
All right.
probably a little discombobulation there, but there we go. Anybody has written questions, we're going to try and work through these as best we can. As Tom said, thank you. It's just so we make sure we get to as many topics as possible, and then if we can't reach the topic, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will have a written record so we can get back to you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it again, everybody taking time to come out. So first question that came in, how do you justify increasing the Pentagon budget rather than Social Security? So that's probably a reference to the deal that was struck.
Yeah, the budget agreement. All right, so who's the question from?
White House.
Anyone? Over here? Okay, so how do we justify the budget increase for defense spending and doing what to Social Security? You know, just the rest of Social Security.
Well, I would think that money would be better spent on Social Security than on the Pentagon, which have plenty.
Okay, okay. Well, there's going to be some common ground here that we're definitely going to agree on. What we can do to stabilize Social Security is something I'm very interested in doing. Now, the problem we've had up to this point is it has been extremely difficult to get the conversation of Social Security and Medicare onto the table for conversations. There's been this mentality in Washington, primarily across the aisle, on the other side of the aisle, that we are not going to do anything to Social Security. We're not going to change Social Security. We're not going to do anything with Social Security, and the same conversation in regards to Medicare. The reason why I object to that position is that if we do nothing, Social Security and Medicare are on a path to insolvency, bankruptcy. And that's not acceptable for America's future. And so your sentiment of trying to protect Social Security, I wholeheartedly agree with. Now, so because it wasn't on the table, because they weren't willing to go there, then the issue of defense spending was part of this conversation. And one thing that I was very concerned of, and I was supportive of removing those sequestration cuts to the defense side of the budget, was because of the way the cuts were occurring, there was really no ability to plan by our military for those cuts because they were happening overnight. Second, they were getting into an area where I was hearing repeated concern from generals on a consistent basis, and people in the Pentagon saying the actual readiness capability of the U.S. military is in jeopardy. And if we're going to ask our men and women to go in harm's way, when I hear that kind of commentary coming out of the folks that are in charge of that mission, my radar goes up, and I'm very concerned about that. So. Readiness, so when we ask them to go into harm's way to protect us, that they are given the best training, the best equipment in order to do the mission and come home safe.
Harm's way include overseas.
Yes, because there are, and I'm glad Iraq is done. Afghanistan is winding up. We've been supportive of ending those missions, and will continue to remain supportive of that. But to think that there is not a threat out there, I can just tell you firsthand, it is out there, and it's there. And I definitely want to make sure that our military has the capability to strike and take care of that threat over there, rather than allowing that threat to happen on American soil. And that's where we can never, ever forget the lessons of 9/11. And so having that capability and that readiness ability is something that you're going to find I'm going to be very supportive of. Question?
Yeah, try and do the most common question first, and the area where we have multiple questions regards how the budget agreement impacts the retirement benefits of retired military personnel, and specifically their COLA adjustments. So we have three questions that touch on that. So maybe if you want to comment.
Yeah.
Particularly the disabled vets.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I thank the opportunity, because it seems like there's multiple questions on that, to explain this, because this I am very concerned about. First of all, as the agreements came together, we had a decision to make on the total agreement. So it's not as if you can just pick out one line and say, okay, I'll support all of it, but I won't support that. So please take that into consideration as to where we were in making the decisions. I am very concerned about the impacts to our vets. Being the son of a 20-year Army veteran, Mom raised us. I'm youngest of 12. Dad died when I was 2. Many of you know this story. Mom raised me on a Social Security check and a military death benefit check. That's why Social Security is very important to me. When I heard and saw that there were potential concerns and cuts to our military folks, I was very interested in seeing exactly what we were talking about. One, my understanding and my reading of the bill is that disabled vets are not part of this language. So that has to be clarified. There is a provision that deals with folks who are under 62 that retire with 20 years of service, and they get a reduction of 1% of their COLA adjustment as they qualify for that 20-year plus pension. Now, at the end, when they become 62, the reductions that they incurred get paid back to them. And what it is a recognition, or what they were trying to do, is to stabilize military pensions for everyone, and recognizing that certain individuals, especially if they go in at the military at 18 or 20, are coming out at 38 or 40, and they're getting another career started. So the concept was, okay, we're going to lighten the pension exposure for them, and because they're getting another income from a second career, and therefore make them whole when they get to their final retirement at 62. That would free up money under the military pension program to pay folks who weren't in that situation and that were potentially looking at pension cuts because they were potentially unfunded. Now, so that's the policy. That's the reason behind why that was there. Obviously, I don't like that. If there was a standalone provision, I would be opposed to those reductions. But looking at the total agreement, looking at the fact that it's 62, they're made whole, weighing that all together, and knowing that there was a lot of us that were concerned about this. We just talked to the chairman of the VA, Mr. Miller, Jeff Miller, this afternoon, and we're going to be joining with him to make sure first the disabled veterans, it's very clear. There's some legislation he's working on that we're not talking about them, and then potentially putting another fix on this issue in and of itself. So.
Actually, as you can see from my desk here, Tom, people can't see, it's all spread out, so we have a lot of different topics, and a lot of stuff we're going to cover,
Right.
which is good. Usually it's clumpy, so we'll get to a lot of different stuff. But there is one that there are multiple questions on, and it has to do with climate change. Frank states just bluntly, how are we, the United States, going to address human-influenced global warming? Leslie ties it to debt. You just expressed your concern about a load of debt for your children to pay. What about the very real likelihood we
we could be leaving them an almost uninhabitable planet. Yes, I'm talking about climate change, the loss of agricultural land, species, coastal lands, etc., if we do not act quickly. So climate change will be.
All right. Well, let's get into the conversation on climate change. Who asked the question?
Leslie and Frank.
Leslie and Frank? Okay, over here. Well, this we're going to actually maybe find some agreement on, okay? This maybe we can. What's that?
Conservation, right?
Conservation and protecting our environment. I think it's good policy not to pollute our backyard. I mean, some people use other terminology. Okay? Yeah. So the question then becomes, if we can identify that I am going to be supportive of policies that do not pollute our backyard. This is our backyard. To me, it makes sense not to do that. The concern about global warming is based a lot on pollution and other issues. So this is where I've reached out to some folks on the other side of the aisle, and we have kind of agreed to say, look, we can have the conversation and argue about climate change. Is it happening? Is it completely man-made? Is it a combination of man-made factors and natural factors? The facts are, I believe climate's warming up. I concede that point. Have us contributing to it in regards to pollution had a role in that? Yeah, probably. But is it the sole cause? No. I would say no. It's not the sole cause. Just given the nature of Mother Nature, and if you look at the history of the world and the numerous times that the world has warmed up, cooled off, I mean, you just got to look in your backyard right here. You look at the Finger Lakes, those were glaciers that were there, right? That came through and carved those lakes out.
But there were 7 billion people on the planet.
Well, and so the point, I mean, this is where we can have that conversation, and that's where I say, okay, you know what? Let's move from that conversation to a conversation that maybe we can agree on. So if the issue is pollution and curbing pollution, let's work together to find out what that is. And there are a lot of things that I think we can do. I think there's a lot of things that we've been doing and been supportive of. I see the gentleman has the opinion on natural gas and hydraulic fracturing. We're going to respectfully disagree on that. I believe we can develop natural gas in a safe and responsible manner with appropriate oversight. And so that could be a short-term and a mid-term potential solution to the issue of emissions and other things that are associated with it. Now, I know you're not going to agree with that, but that's okay. That's where we can disagree. But I think that is a much better clean fuel, natural gas, rather than some of the other fuels that we utilize. So we're going to be supportive of that.
Biofuels.
Sure. I'm sorry?
Wind and solar are cleaner.
That's why, and there's another area of agreement that we could
Not enough
potentially
of
agree
it,
to.
no. There's not enough of it, huh?
Yeah. And this is where I am supportive, and as I hand out the fourth point of our policy that focuses on jobs is an all of the above energy program in America, and a comprehensive energy policy need for America. And that's where alternatives and renewables have a role in that all of the above approach. They do. But I will tell you that I don't believe that alternatives and renewables can today replace fossil fuels and other sources of energy in our economy and in our way of life.
Right.
I just don't believe that's the case. But that doesn't mean we can't work together to identify where alternatives and renewables are part of that portfolio. We have been supportive of the production tax credit, for example, that helps wind as a potential resource to be developed. We've been supportive of hydropower. I'm very supportive of the rural electric co-ops in our backyard and their model and legislation that helps them out. So there's some things there that I think we can agree upon. And the last point, when it comes to alternative renewables, because we've heard this quite a bit, is recognize that there is a role for them in our energy needs in America. And we're talking about having a manufacturing rebirth in America that I'm committed to, that I believe in, where we make it here and sell it there. We are going to need some high, dense supplies of energy to melt glass, melt steel, and I'll tell you, wind and others, you can't do that. You can't have that manufacturing utility be dependent on just those simple or single sources of energy. So that's why I think we need all of it. So, yep. Go right ahead.
The Affordable Care Act. I expect a couple questions on that. A couple different perspectives. Michael, Obamacare. People can't afford it. Thought it was supposed to be, I'm guessing, affordable. I fall above Medicare and lower than affordable living, so I'm having trouble paying for the plans on the exchanges. And then, insofar as Obamacare and relating to contraception, 99% of the women in America use contraception. Women's preventative care, including birth control, is basic health care, and that's how Obamacare treats it. The country wants Congress to focus on jobs and the economy. Why are you pushing an agenda against birth control and Obamacare? A couple different perspectives.
All right. Well, let's take the big question first, and then we'll get to the second question on contraception. So, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and it sounds like we have a difference of opinion, maybe as to people on the issue in this room here tonight. I believe our record is very clear that I believe the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is not good policy for America. I voted against it when it came up for potential repeal, and I will continue to be against it. I don't think it's going to solve the problem of healthcare costs in America.